Hello, welcome to the Infidelity Stories channel, where we present genuine narratives filled with surprising turns. If you appreciate the video, please consider subscribing and giving it a thumbs up. It truly supports the growth of our channel. Now, let's plunge into the narrative. I've always taken pride in being an ordinary person, nothing extravagant, just a reliable job, a stable marriage, and a consistent life. I'm 30 years old and joyfully married to my wife, Emily. We've shared a few years together, and although we don't have children at this point, that's certainly something we envision for the future. I am employed by a large organization, and I truly appreciate that opportunity. The compensation is satisfactory, it meets our financial obligations, and it provides me with a feeling of security. I'm someone who appreciates predictability, and back then, that was exactly what I required. That day at work unfolded in a perfectly ordinary manner. I got there ahead of time, picked up my coffee, and dove into my routine, emails, meetings, and reports. The typical scenario. Having spent considerable time with the company, I've become well acquainted with the details, and the routine has settled into a comfortable rhythm. The office hummed with a familiar energy, yet nothing felt out of the ordinary. Mr. Harper was in his office, and as always, his wife, Zoya, had come in. She was also part of the team, albeit in a more consultative capacity, overseeing significant decisions. Though our encounters outside of meetings were few, her presence was consistently felt during crucial moments. However, that morning, events unfolded in a surprising manner. As I sat at my desk, focused on completing a presentation for an afternoon meeting, a sudden burst of shouting erupted from Mr. Harper's office, breaking my concentration. Initially, it didn't seem significant to me. High-stakes business environments are often rife with tension. However, the shouting intensified, and Zoya's voice pierced through the noise, sharper and more pronounced than I had ever heard it before. That behavior was completely out of character for her. A moment later, the door to Mr. Harper's office burst open with a resounding bang, and Zoya charged out. Her fury was unmistakable, her face a vivid shade of red. Mr. Harper trailed behind her, his face set in a grim and tense expression, yet his eyes conveyed a sense of resignation rather than genuine anger. It was evident that something significant had transpired, yet amidst the turmoil, it appeared that no one truly grasped the full extent of the situation. Suddenly, Zoya approached me directly. I found myself at a crossroads, uncertain of the path ahead. I hadn't truly experienced many personal exchanges with Zoya. She maintained a consistently professional demeanor, often appearing somewhat aloof. Yet now, as she neared my desk, there was an unmistakable change in her demeanor. Her step carried an almost frantic energy. In an instant, she was upon me, her grip around my neck steady yet gentle, drawing me closer to her. I barely had a moment to grasp the unfolding events. Her lips brushed against mine in a kiss that seemed to emerge from the depths of the unexpected. A hush descended over the entire office. The weight of every gaze pressed upon us, the entire room frozen in disbelief as they observed our every move. Uncertainty clouded my thoughts. I found myself at a loss for how to respond, what actions to take, or even the reasons behind her behavior. Thoughts surged through my mind, striving to keep pace with the unfolding moment. Yet, my mind was consumed by the kiss, the sensation of her lips on mine, and the intense awareness that this moment unfolded before my colleagues and her husband. I hesitated for a moment, yet Zoya held on firmly. She gazed at me, her eyes aflame with an intensity that was unprecedented. And then, just as swiftly as it had begun, she let me go. She took a step back, remaining silent, then turned and exited the office as if the moment had never occurred. Her heels echoed decisively against the floor as she departed, and the stillness in the room lingered for what seemed like an eternity. Mr. Harper remained silent as well. He gazed at me with an inscrutable expression before forcefully shutting the door behind him. The room remained eerily silent for a few more seconds. Then, as if to ease the atmosphere, individuals gradually returned to their tasks, feigning normalcy as if nothing out of the ordinary had occurred. Yet, I sensed the heaviness of the moment that had just unfolded. There I stood, utterly bewildered, as a torrent of questions swirled through my thoughts. What on earth was that? What prompted her to take that action? What makes me the one? And above all, what would unfold next? I attempted to banish the incident from my thoughts, yet it proved to be an impossible task. Whenever I attempted to concentrate on my tasks, my mind repeatedly drifted back to that kiss. The image of Zoya's eyes lingered in my mind, their intensity captivating me in that moment. It was a moment that defied logic, yet with each replay, my confusion deepened. The remainder of the day drifted by in a blur. I found myself frequently stealing glances at Mr. Harper's office. I was somewhat bracing myself for him to summon me in and scold me. Yet, nothing occurred. He remained distant, silent as the air between us thickened. For him, it was as if the kiss had never taken place. Yet, for me, it seemed as though everything had transformed. The atmosphere in the office was distinct, denser, and imbued with an unidentifiable energy. When I finally clocked out that evening, I felt utterly drained, physically, mentally, and emotionally. My mind was a whirlwind of uncertainty. The kiss left me in a state of uncertainty, pondering its significance and what it might imply for my future. I was uncertain whether Zoya had acted to provoke her husband or if there was a more profound reason lurking beneath the surface. All I understood was that I had just been kissed by my boss's wife right in front of him, and now I needed to navigate the chaos that had just unfolded. The following days passed in a haze. Each morning, I awoke to that familiar, unsettling sensation deep within me, an unending echo of the kiss. It was more than the kiss alone. The shock enveloped the room, confusion hung in the air, and silence reigned in the aftermath. What did Zoya intend by that? Was it a spontaneous decision, or was there a deeper motivation at play? Countless questions swirled in my mind, yet answers eluded me. And to make matters worse, I found myself unable to confide in anyone about it. At work, everything appeared strangely routine, yet I couldn't dismiss the sense that something had changed. Each time I entered the office, I was almost certain someone would take me aside and inquire about the situation with Zoya. Yet, no one took action. The colleagues I had known for years behaved as if nothing had shifted, as if they hadn't witnessed the most uncomfortable moment of my life play out right before their eyes. Zoya, however, was an entirely different tale. She neither shunned my presence nor pretended that all was well. It felt as though she was anticipating my words, yet she never urged me to speak. She exuded an unusual tranquility, a sense of poise, as if the events unfolding around her were merely routine. Yet her eyes told a different tale altogether. She glanced my way multiple times in recent days. Swift looks, prolonged gazes. And each time, it seemed there was an unspoken thought lingering on her lips. Yet, I found myself unable to face her. It seemed off. I had no desire to get entangled in any office theatrics. I definitely didn't want to complicate matters further with Mr. Harper. Not a single word had passed between us since that day. There were no heated exchanges, no scrutinizing gazes. It felt as though he had embraced the entire situation in silence, leaving me with an even deeper sense of unease. On the third day following the kiss, as I was leaving the office, I noticed Zoya waiting by the elevators. She found herself in solitude, her typical air of assurance giving way to a sense of hesitation. Upon catching sight of me, she offered a subtle, nearly contrite smile and approached. My heart raced, and I immediately wished I hadn't even entertained the thought of the kiss. What will she say next? "Brian," she started, her tone gentle yet firm, "can we have a moment to chat?" I found myself at a loss for words. A part of me wished to decline, to simply step into the elevator and erase the entire incident from my mind. Yet, a different part of me, one that was tinged with curiosity and perhaps a hint of conflict, gestured for her to come along. We stepped into the lobby, seeking refuge from curious gazes, and she paused at the coffee station. "I understand this might feel a bit strange for you," she began, her fingers nervously toying with the coffee cup. It wasn't intended to unfold that way. It wasn't something I had in mind. I arched an eyebrow, caught in a moment of uncertainty about how to reply. What was its intended purpose? She let out a slow breath, her eyes scanning the surroundings, as if to ensure no one was eavesdropping. The situation is intricate. My husband has been acting suspiciously towards me lately, constantly accusing me of having an affair, despite the fact that it's simply not true. Honestly, I reached my limit. I paused, uncertain how to interpret this. Thus, it bestowed a kiss to make a statement. Zoya nodded, her expression slightly bashful. It was never intended to unfold in such a dramatic way. Indeed, I hoped he would understand that I owe him no explanations. And when I laid eyes on you, I found myself at a loss for words. You were near, and you appeared, I can't quite put it into words, like a person who wouldn't pass judgment. I finally went ahead and did it. A flicker of anger stirred within me. You selected me because I would remain non-judgmental towards you. She shrugged, a gentle warmth spreading across her features. I preferred it not to be anyone from the office, someone too familiar with him, yet I had to emphasize my point. Honestly, the kiss exceeded my expectations. That caught me off guard. Excuse me. Zoya wore a smirk, yet her eyes revealed an unexpected vulnerability. You're doing quite well at this, Brian. Don't be taken aback if I find myself doing it again in the future. I remained frozen, in disbelief. She must have been joking, don't you think? She was destined to be. Zoya's tone took on a more serious note as she said, Look, I'm just trying to clear the air. However, if you feel uneasy, I completely get it. Things have been challenging at home, and I felt the need to take action. You're a decent person, Brian. I never intended to place you in an uncomfortable situation. I found myself at a loss for words. A part of me felt the urge to retreat, to urge her to keep me out of her turmoil, to not drag me into the chaos she was entangled in with her husband. Yet a part of me grasped the essence. I had observed how Mr. Harper had been treating her recently. As if she bore the weight of a crime she hadn't committed. The weight of expectation she must have experienced. All right, I replied, feeling uncertain about how to wrap up the discussion. However, I am in a marriage, Zoya. I wish for nothing to arise from this. It's merely a kiss. We'll just leave it as is. She nodded, her expression becoming a touch gentler. I see where you're coming from, Brian. No need to be concerned, I won't pressure you. However, don't be taken aback if things become a bit unusual for some time. You're familiar with the routine. She pivoted and strode off in silence, leaving me there, once more adrift in contemplation. What had I just stepped into? The following days unfolded like a meticulously crafted scene of calamity, each moment stretching out in agonizing detail before me. Each time I entered the office, memories of the past flooded back to me. The kiss from Zoya, abrupt and unforeseen, lingered in my thoughts, a vivid echo that refused to fade. The memory of her lips lingered on mine, heavy with emotion, accompanied by the eerie stillness that ensued. Yet what troubled me even more was the way everything appeared to remain unchanged. No consequences followed. There will be no conflict. Zoya persisted in her demeanor as if everything remained the same. Yet her demeanor was nuanced, nearly overly cautious. She would lock eyes with me from across the room, her smile a subtle curve, hinting at a shared secret that lingered between us, unnoticed by others. Yet, she wasn't alone in this. The atmosphere in the office was thick with anticipation, as if everyone was pausing, eager for the next moment to unfold. Perhaps it was my own suspicions, or perhaps I was simply searching for clues, but it felt as though everyone was observing me with a heightened intensity. They would steal a glance as I walked in, swiftly averting their eyes when our gazes met, as though they were privy to secrets beyond my understanding. However, the most unfortunate aspect? Mr. Harper. Not a single word had passed between us since that day, yet his presence lingered like a weight in the air. Whenever I laid eyes on him, an unsettling sense lingered that he possessed knowledge beyond my grasp. His eyes held no anger, no judgment, yet, there was a chill, a sense of distance that lingered. It seemed as though he was observing me, assessing my every move, attempting to determine if I had any connection to the bizarre spectacle unfolding out of sight. One afternoon, while leaving the break room, I encountered Mr. Harper in the hallway. In that instant, I became completely still. He stood there, arms crossed, his expression a mystery. My heart raced in my chest, a palpable tension hanging in the air, as if he were aware of every secret I held. My throat felt parched, and I nearly tripped over my own speech as I welcomed him. "Mr. Harper," I said, attempting to maintain a nonchalant tone as if everything was perfectly fine. He nodded, his gaze lingering just a moment longer than necessary. "Brian," he responded, his tone more frigid than normal. "How is everything progressing?" It was an uncomplicated inquiry, yet I sensed its profound significance. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation, as if he were poised for me to utter a word, any word, that might either validate or refute his doubts. "All is well, sir," I replied, mustering a smile. Although I felt a deep turmoil within. As per usual, he examined me for a brief moment longer before offering a terse nod. "Excellent, maintain that approach." And then he turned and walked away, leaving me there, engulfed in a haze of confusion. What was that all about? Was he aware? Was he merely toying with the situation? Or was I overanalyzing it? That evening, I returned to my wife, Emma, and attempted to set aside the entire situation from my thoughts. I never intended to pull her into this chaos, nor did I wish for her to fret over matters I couldn't articulate, yet it was unavoidable. The entire day unraveled. Whenever my gaze fell upon Emma, I was struck by her trusting expression and the unwavering faith she had in me, which made me acutely aware of my shortcomings. I kept the kiss a secret from her. I kept Zoya's peculiar words to myself. After dinner, as we lounged on the couch, I caught myself gazing at the television, though my mind was elsewhere. Emma picked up on my aloof attitude right away. "Brian, what's happening?" she inquired, her tone soft yet filled with worry. "You seem a bit out of sorts today." I paused, contemplating my next move. What would be the best way to articulate this? How can I explain to her what transpired at work without it coming off as utterly absurd? I couldn't bring myself to reveal the truth about Zoya kissing me, nor could I explain the chaos that was unraveling in the office. "I'm okay," I finally replied, mustering a smile. "Is it related to work?" No need for concern. However, she chose not to purchase it. "You're not okay, Brian. You seem far away. It seems you've hardly spoken since we took our seats." I began to speak but hesitated, closing my mouth once more, uncertain of how to navigate this situation. Emma was entitled to the truth, yet what words could I possibly find to express it? My boss's wife kissed me, and now I feel like I'm navigating a precarious balance at work. I couldn't escape the sensation that everyone was privy to some secret I was unaware of. It seemed utterly absurd. "I'm feeling quite overwhelmed," I remarked, averting my gaze. "It's just a trivial matter, honestly." Yet Emma remained unconvinced. She inched nearer, her hand softly placed atop mine. "Just so you know, I'm here if you want to chat. If there's something on your mind, we can work through it together." I nodded, appreciative of her empathy, yet the words eluded me. "Not at this moment." In the days that followed, the situation at work continued to deteriorate. Zoya's efforts to flirt with me were increasingly difficult to overlook. It had evolved beyond mere smiles or compliments. She leaned in just a bit too close during our conversations, her hand brushing against my arm as if we shared a long history. She began to make subtle remarks about how I appeared in specific outfits and expressed her appreciation for my efforts. It felt as though she was challenging limits, probing my responses, seeking to gauge my reaction. I found myself at a loss, unsure of the next step to take. I was married, for heaven's sake. I simply couldn't invest myself in the intricate game she was orchestrating. One afternoon, she trapped me by the elevators. "Brian," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "I trust one haven't created any uncomfortable tension between us. However, I believe we are both aware of the bond that exists between us." A shiver coursed through me. "Zoya, I have my doubts about this plan." She wore a smirk, yet a glimmer of something profound danced in her eyes. "No need to fret, Brian. I'm not requesting anything at all. I wanted to clarify that I have no regrets about what transpired." I took a deep breath. "I am in a marriage, Zoya. This situation is simply not acceptable." She moved in, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I comprehend. Yet, there are moments when we crave something deeper, wouldn't you agree?" Before I could utter a single word, the elevator door slid open, and she stepped inside without a glance back, leaving me there, heart racing. What just transpired? What was I meant to do to escape this predicament? The following days unfolded in a hush, marked by uncomfortable looks and an escalating sense of unease. I reached my breaking point. I found myself in a position where I had to face Mr. Harper. The atmosphere in the office was thick with tension. After all that had transpired, I found myself moving through life like a ticking time bomb. Zoya's bold move, the kiss shared in the presence of Mr. Harper. All of it had grown overwhelming. It transcended mere awkwardness or guilt at this point. The situation seemed to be slipping further and further away from my grasp. It was impossible to overlook it any further. I needed to confide in someone, and the only individual I could approach was Mr. Harper. I devoted the whole morning to an internal debate. I was aware of the potential danger. Revealing the truth might either bring clarity or complicate matters significantly. Yet, I found myself unable to bear this burden any further. The anxiety of anticipating Zoya's next move, of the predicament I found myself in. The atmosphere was stifling. I had to be honest, even if it meant dealing with the fallout. At last, just past midday, I caught sight of him in the corridor. As he made his way to his office, I realized this was the moment I had been waiting for. I needed to act swiftly, lest I falter in my resolve. "Mr. Harper," I called, my voice wavering. He paused, turning his gaze toward me, a subtle frown beginning to etch itself on his features. "What is it, Brian?" His tone was more frigid than normal. "I must speak with you." "It's about Zoya," I stated, striving to maintain a calm tone despite the rapid beating of my heart. After a moment of uncertainty, he motioned toward his office. "Step right in." As the door clicked shut, the space around us seemed to constrict, enveloping us in an almost suffocating embrace. My palms were clammy as I settled into the chair opposite him. He remained silent for a moment, simply gazing at me, as if anticipating my next move. "Mr. Harper, I'm at a loss for words." I started my voice, just a soft murmur escaping my lips. "However, your wife kissed me just a few days back, right in front of everyone. And ever since that moment, she has been progressing forward. I feel lost, and I can't ignore the reality of the situation." A moment of quiet lingered briefly. Mr. Harper's expression was unreadable, yet I noticed the tension in his jaw muscles. I prepared myself for whatever lay ahead. However, his words took me by surprise entirely. "I know," he said, his voice steady, almost unsettlingly so. "What?" I inquired, my eyes widening in bewilderment. "Were you aware of the kiss?" "Indeed," he responded in a monotone, his gaze sharpening just a touch. "I have noticed Zoya's behavior for some time now. She has a history of doing this with others, Brian. I have been observing her." I found myself at a loss for words. This entire scenario seemed to be spiraling beyond comprehension, and now Mr. Harper was confessing that he had been aware of it from the very beginning. A wave of disbelief surged through me. "What does this imply?" I inquired, my voice trembling. Is this acceptable to you? Mr. Harper's gaze became icy. I never stated that. I find it unacceptable. However, I cannot dictate every aspect. Zoya follows her own path, and it's about time you recognize that. I refuse to offer any justifications on her behalf. But why didn't you take action regarding it? I inquired, a hint of exasperation slipping into my tone. Why allow it to continue? What held you back from intervening with her? He reclined in his chair, the chill in his gaze intensifying. Do you genuinely believe I possessed the ability to halt her? You simply don't get it, Brian. You can't possibly understand what I go through at home. This is simply the way things unfold with Zoya. I've attempted to address the issue with her previously, but it always falls flat. Now, you find yourself entangled in her schemes. A knot twisted in my stomach. This exceeded my worst expectations. His words left me puzzled, yet I could feel the underlying bitterness in them. He felt a deep sense of frustration regarding his wife's actions. He appeared to be filled with bitterness. I endeavored to maintain my poise. I want to emphasize that this was not something I requested. I never wished for this to occur. Mr. Harper's gaze pierced through me, and for an instant, I felt the tension build as if he might burst forth with uncontained emotion. Yet, his voice carried a low and unsettling calmness. It seems you're not quite grasping the situation, are you? You are equally involved in this as she is. You've allowed it to continue. You've allowed her to believe she can escape the consequences. I parted my lips to speak, yet the words remained trapped within me. I found myself at a loss for how to protect my own interests. I sensed I was ensnared in a circumstance where my words seemed futile, unable to effect any change. Perhaps you ought to have considered that prior to getting involved. Mr. Harper pressed on, his tone growing cold. This kind of behavior will not be accepted in my company. Before I had a chance to reply, he rose suddenly, pacing around the desk. We have to let you go, Brian. In effect right away. The word struck me with the force of a sudden blow. I stood still, my mind struggling to grasp the unfolding events. Excuse me. Surely, you must be joking. I'm quite earnest, he stated, his tone deep and conclusive. You've overstepped, and I cannot allow someone like you to be part of my team. The room swirled around me, and for an instant, I found myself gasping for air. I had just bared my soul, sharing all my thoughts, hoping he might provide some insight or a way to navigate through this chaos. Instead, I found myself being shown the door. Kindly. I pleaded, my voice scarcely a murmur. I acted with integrity. I was merely attempting to resolve this issue. Mr. Harper brushed past me, his gaze fixed firmly ahead as he approached the door. Gather your belongings. Your time here is complete. Heavy-hearted, I pivoted and exited his office. My thoughts were clouded and unfocused. I found myself stripped of everything I held dear, the job, my dignity, and my sense of security. And for what purpose? To be cast aside for something I never sought. As I gathered my belongings and exited the building, a sense of betrayal washed over me. I believed I was making the right choice, yet ultimately, it was I who bore the consequences. I was uncertain about the future, yet there was one truth I held on to. My time at that company had come to an end. Words fail to capture the events that unfolded. The last few days feel like a nightmarish haze from which I cannot escape. The truth of what transpired continues to resonate within me, and it seems as if everything is unfolding at a leisurely pace. One moment, I was just an ordinary employee at a company I believed in, and the next, I'm outside the building, belongings in hand, dismissed for something I never intended to be involved in. Zoya. What on earth was that all about? I still find it hard to comprehend. What motivated her actions? What makes me the right choice? The kiss, her nonchalant demeanor, the way she gazed at me as if it were all just a playful charade. It simply doesn't add up. It never happened. And then, we have Mr. Harper. I needed to share it with him. I wondered, perhaps, just perhaps, he might comprehend. I felt it was important for him to understand the situation, to be aware of his wife's actions. Instead of receiving understanding, I was let go. I attempted to rectify the situation, but ultimately, I only exacerbated it. He was indifferent. He showed no concern for me or the struggles I was facing. His sole concern was to mask his own humiliation. I understand it now. It transcends the notions of right and wrong. It's about preserving the integrity of the image. And I had become a ghost in that picture. Stepping out of the building for the final time, a sense of relief washed over me, despite the uncertainty of what lay ahead. The next steps remain a mystery to me. However, there is one thing I am certain of. My integrity is intact. I refuse to be pulled into the convoluted game they were orchestrating. I faced the truth within myself. I spoke truthfully to my wife. And that's a truth that, regardless of how chaotic everything else may be, I can cling to. It's quite peculiar, isn't it? At moments like these, when you stand at a pivotal juncture, it's natural to begin to scrutinize every aspect of your life. The decisions you make, the principles you uphold, and the path ahead. What should I do next? What comes next when you find yourself in this position, without a job and uncertain about your path forward? I have dedicated my entire adult life to constructing a career, believing that each step I took would lead me to a stable and secure place. What about now? At this moment, I need to begin anew. Once more. I'm at a loss for how to convey this to my wife, Sarah. I must reveal everything to her. Concerning the kiss. Concerning Zoya. Concerning the matter involving Mr. Harper. I can already sense her frustration brewing. Perhaps even let down by me. However, I cannot deceive her. I can't begin to conceal things now. It will be challenging, yet it is the correct course of action. She has a right to the truth. I believe she will come to understand in time, yet that doesn't alleviate the difficulty of the situation. The deepest pain comes from knowing I was merely attempting to act with integrity. I aimed to put in the effort, stay focused, and build a better future for Sarah and myself. This entire situation has completely derailed everything. I believed I was managing well. Engaging in tasks, strategizing for what lies ahead. Yet, at this moment, I'm left in a state of uncertainty. I never envisioned that circumstances would unfold in this manner. I refuse to remain trapped in this moment. It's time for me to progress forward. I need to seek out a new opportunity. Restore all that I have dedicated myself to. Indeed, it can be quite daunting. It's truly frightening, to be honest. However, I refuse to dwell in self-pity. This will not be my defining moment. I have always held the conviction that with effort and dedication, improvement is bound to follow. I must hold on to that belief. Even amidst the swirling doubts of the present moment. I've spent the entire morning dispatching resumes. It's peculiar, isn't it? My confidence has been rattled. I find myself pondering how to articulate this hiatus in my career. How can I articulate the reasons for my departure from my previous position? The challenging aspect lies ahead. However, I will find a way to resolve it. I will ensure they understand that this situation was not centered around me. It revolved around an issue that was entirely beyond my influence. It's quite challenging to envision a glimmer of hope at this moment. I assure myself that everything will be all right. Though it may require patience, I will navigate my way through this challenge. There is always a path ahead. Even when it seems like everything is in disarray. One thing I can say with certainty is that I will never lose myself again. I will always stay true to myself, no matter the circumstances. Not even for employment. Regardless of how attractive the compensation may be. It simply isn't worth the effort. I have erred. I find myself entangled in a situation I never intended to join. However, I refuse to allow this to shape my identity. This will not derail the future I have tirelessly crafted. I will proceed forward. I will discover something superior. I must hold on to that belief. Above all, I will be truthful with Sarah. I am indebted to her for that.